the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Thank you for joining us. Today is May 14th. I can't believe we're already into May. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here in Eugene, Oregon. And as it usually is, it's a little bit gray and overcast. Hopefully we'll get some blue skies out there today. I hope your day is really delightful today. Thank you for joining us. And we have with us a friend of our show, Dave Parrish, who runs a website called Operation Save the Earth, OSTE. You can find him, and he puts out a podcast on YouTube every Friday that I can't wait for, frankly, every Friday. And his YouTube channel is called Dave Parrish, Parrish, and it's Fuku Friday message. So thanks, Dave, for joining us. It's awesome to have you back with us.
Thanks for having me, Lonnie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, the thing that I really love about your weekly podcast is they encourage people to stay active, and you're not asking them to do it full time. You ask people to dedicate 8 minutes a day.
Yeah.
What's the thinking about the 8 minutes a day? Why don't you explain that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I first started Operation Save the Earth, and I was, trying to formulate, what was the best way to, have people engage in it, because, it's such a weighty topic, the whole nuclear issue, what's going on at Fukushima, what's been going on at Chernobyl and so forth. It's a lot to take in. And for most people, it's almost too much, right? So, there's that old saying that you can eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So, if you just take that sort of mindset, where it's like if you just chip away at it and, put a little bit of time in your schedule, just a little bit, and learn more about what the problem is, eventually, you're going to be halfway through that elephant, and people are going to look at you like, you ate all of that? And it's like, yes. So, it's very doable, 8 minutes. It's 1/180th of your day. Everyone has 8 minutes in their time, whether they're standing in line at the grocery store, whether you're flipping through channels, just waiting for the commercials to get over with. You have those spare minutes in your day. Everyone just has to put it in their schedule and then dedicate that time to learning more about what it is that they need to learn about. And that's, how radiation is affecting their lives, how it's, affecting their DNA, how it's affecting their kids' futures, really. So, we all need to be more on board with, learning about that stuff that they do not teach us in school. They do not teach us about in the mainstream media. It's something that I had to learn myself. And again, when I first started this, I knew nothing about nuclear energy, how it worked, anything about that, but in the time since 2011, I've learned, everything you can learn about it. And, I'm always learning more. That's the best part. You can always learn more. And because life is a continual learning process, this is an excellent opportunity for you not just to learn more, but to, really be proactive in your life, take better care of yourself and your loved ones.
Yeah, that's our best defense, actually, is just to eat well, eat a healthy diet, exercise, and be happy. It sounds sophomoric almost. But that really is, because we are living in the toxic stew. And it's not just nuclear. We're living in a chemical stew, pharmaceutical stew. I mean, we've got it all. This is what they've done when they started this program. They pretty much, Katie, bar the door, let everything out. And so that you can't point to just, this is why it's very difficult if you've been exposed to radioactivity to have any type of financial assistance, because you can't say it's caused by nuclear because there's so many other toxins in the environment. It could be from something else. I mean, that's the thing.
And you know what, Lonnie, that old argument that they've been using, believe me, I used to work in insurance, and I know about risk pools and liability and all that kind of thing, underwriting and everything. And that's always the excuse, right? Oh, well, you can't say it's nuclear that gave you this cancer because it could have been this, that, or the other thing. Well, you know what? I still can say that it's nuclear that gave, my sister-in-law thyroid cancer.
Right.
You know why? Because thyroid cancer comes from two places, hereditary and nuclear. It doesn't come from these, other toxins and things like that, right? So, for her to, suddenly, all out of the blue, get thyroid cancer, post-Fukushima,
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, but 1 + 1 is 2.
It's like my sister.
Make an argument otherwise, forget about it. I'm going to go with the math.
This is the same argument I had with my sister, who lives near 3 Mile Island, and she lives in between a triangle of 3 nuclear power plants, one of which is 3 Mile Island, less than 15 miles away. She and her husband had several kids, 4 children together, and they each came into the marriage with children. Out of their children that live there, they have a total of, between the two of them, 11 children. She had a few kids, he had a few kids, and then they had a few more kids, right? So,
gotcha.
Like, they came into it with 4, I think she had 3, and then they had 4 more. So, they had a big family, and they all lived there. They now have 3 autistic grandchildren. Autism does not run in our family, nor his.
Nope.
And we have 3, and frankly, there's a high level of schizophrenia in her family, to be honest.
Wow. Okay.
These are things that John Goffman and Arthur Tamplin identified when you were exposed to constant low-level radioactive contamination. 3 things pop up immediately: diabetes, schizophrenia, autism, and autoimmune. 4 things: autoimmune deficiency diseases. Right. And so, ironically, in their family, they're little, and yet my sister refuses to admit that maybe living they live 12 miles away from 3 Mile Island. Yeah. So she does not want to admit that might have had a hand in it, because her kids were normal with quotes. Right? Yeah. People don't get that it's your next generation and the next generation. When you see these weird things that are popping up in our grandchildren, it has everything to do with exposure to radioactivity.
Yeah, and whether you want to admit it or not, it doesn't change the facts.
Right.
I mean, you all those 4 things you just talked about, Lonnie. I mean, hey, guess what, America? 40% of the population lives within a 50-mile radius of a nuclear reactor in this country.
Wow,
so
really?
Why do we see so much diabetes? Yes, 40%.
Wow.
Why do we see so much diabetes? Why do we see so much autism? Why do we see so many of these things? Especially, after the 70s, 80s, 90s, and, into the 21st century now, becoming more and more prevalent. Because when you and I were kids, Lonnie, we didn't have these things. Autism, what was that?
Right.
1
or 2 kids maybe.
That never happened.
Yeah.
It was incredibly rare for stuff like that to happen to my peers, certainly. And now, kids getting brain cancer, kids getting every kind of cancer that there is, like it's the flu. I'm like, whoa, where's all this coming from? Well, why don't you go ask the World Health Organization? Weren't they the ones that said they were going to see a 70% increase in cancers over the next What, 30 years? Yes. Yeah. Well, gee, I wonder where that's coming from.
Wow, Dave, you pressed a button for me, Dave, and mentioned the World Health Organization, because most people are not aware that they signed a contract with the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, and they, in 1957, that says that the IAEA can supervise and oversee every single one of their medical studies and suppress any information they want if they think it's going to hurt the nuclear industry. And they have. This is what they did in Chernobyl. They do it regularly, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, still all around the world. I mean, wasn't there just some incident in Belgium a couple weeks ago that nobody in mainstream talked about whatsoever? And again, IAEA, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Well, look at the nuclear alerts.
That's their stock and trade.
Look at every single nuclear alert. There's things on here that is just beyond comprehension. It, like, on the page it says emergency, emergency, and then there's always a quote that says no harm to human health.
I mean, literally every single report. That line right there is in every single report. It's like the law. They have to have that in there, right? So, and that's why their credibility is shot. If you ask me, if you're just going to continue to do the same things over and over and over again, the same old song and dance that they've been perpetrating on us for the past 70 years, this whole Atoms for Peace nonsense. Well, guess what? It's like the boy who cried wolf. It gets old after a while. Eventually people stop listening to, the blah, blah, blah that comes out of your mouth. So IAEA, why should I believe you? UNSCEAR, why should I believe you? WHO, why should I believe you? When you continue to lie, when you continue to, just run the same playbook over and over and over again, and we see the results of that. We see, the cancers in kids. We see the diabetes in kids, like you said before, and, but they're running the same playbook. What they're saying must be true, right? No. What they're saying must be patently false if what we're seeing in the results is quite different than what they're talking about. I mean, look at Hanford in Washington State, right? Oh, well, yeah, no real danger from, this collapse or this, the accident or these materials leaving the site, right? Nothing really bad's going to happen. And that fish report I talked about in Oregon State, they were very clear to qualify, well, you need to eat like 70,000 pounds of fish for this to, actually affect you. Really? Really?
I think that was a conversation we had before we got on the air, a few minutes before the air. Dave and I were talking about people still eating tuna and how confusing it is. And I found an article by the Healthy Home Economist that says, is tuna safe to eat after Fukushima? And basically it says, it depends on where you are. And it depends on who you believe. They sort of give the whole thing, So the last sentence says, the most unsettling data to date is the continued outflow of water from Fukushima now no longer just contains cesium isotopes. It also contains the more worrisome strontium-90, which is a bone-seeking isotope.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, tuna is an alpha predator in the ocean. They eat everything. Have you seen a real tuna? They're gigantic. They're gigantic fish.
Right,
they eat everything. They're like, they're like the garbage compactor of the Pacific Ocean. So if they eat everything, and it don't matter which part of the Pacific Ocean they're swimming around and eating in, well, guess what? Those other fish that have been swimming around in the radioactive areas, they get eaten up, right? So, I mean, no matter what, you're literally saying, whenever you sit down at the sushi bar, you are literally saying, I accept the risk that probably exists from eating this fish. Now, it could be radiation that you're worrying about. It could be mercury poisoning that you're worried about. It could be any number of the other toxins that these fish have had to ingest because of the way we treat the Pacific Ocean like a sewer, where we just dump everything, our plastic, our radioactive materials, every kind of toxin that you can think of. It goes in the Pacific Ocean because there's this ridiculous mindset that has been perpetrated, again, by the so-called oceanographers, that the Pacific Ocean is vast and wide and can accept, basically any number of, things that we can imagine to dump into it.
Right.
Well, you know what? Chickens are coming home to roost on that because, we've seen what's going on with the salmon run in the Pacific Northwest this year. It is terrible. I'm surprised that they had any kind of commercial fishing at all going in the Pacific Northwest right now because there ain't no fish coming back. We're seeing the numbers that are way, way, way up now, right? And like I said, I just read this report yesterday from Scientific American through Reuters that says Fukushima radioactivity found in tuna off of Oregon and Washington.
That's right. It's a brand new one off of Reuters. It's from the online Scientific American.
That's correct. And, again, it's saying, hey, Jay Cullen, last year, you were wrong. Mr. Oceanographer from Victoria University who, was quoted in Huffington Post saying, oh, well, there was never any radiation worry in the Pacific Ocean whatsoever. Yeah, well, Scientific American just said otherwise, Mr. Cullen. So your oceanographic skills are seriously in question right now, aren't they? Because, his reports, he gets, the funding to do these reports and kill 100,000 fish while he's, supposedly looking for all these, radioactive isotopes, finding nothing. And then, a year later, Scientific American says, yeah, you're wrong. So, yeah, what a waste of time, Mr. Cullen, and what a waste of time for all the oceanographers out there that continue to propagate the cover-up. I don't care what you're getting paid at this point, and I don't care who's paying your bills. Look, what's real? Look at the ocean with your eyes. Look at the dead tide pools. Look at the commercial crab fishing in California that hasn't existed for the past 3 years. Look at all the dead fish. Look at all the dead birds. Look at all the dead things out of the Pacific.
Dead birds just falling out of the sky, literally.
Right. Exactly. The Muirs in British Columbia. It's really, really sad.
See, this
really,
article
really sad.
in Scientific American, though, it helps propagate the idea that it's just not that bad because it does say that it's so small. The levels are way too small to be a food safety issue, but still, we want to tell people about it so they know what's there. That's what Neville said. But the thing is, there is no safe level. Radiation levels tripled from fish tested before Fukushima and fish tested after. Tripled.
Exactly.
So it's just not safe.
For sure. Remember that study that Celine Marie Pascal did a few years ago, Lonnie, that showed that 94% of the mainstream articles related to Fukushima and other radioactive things, 94% of them were not correct. They were, not true to promoting human health, but rather they were, again, like this article in Scientific American, where it's saying, oh, yeah, well, there's radiation, but you need to eat a lot of it, and again, like you said, propagating the myth that you still can eat the fish. Yeah, that's fine. It's just that, you're still accepting risk, even though they're saying that it's an infinitesimally small risk. Well, you eat enough sushi, and believe me, it will stack up on you. I mean, these radioisotopes, once they're ingested, you think they just, wash themselves out like, potassium 40 in your bananas? No, they stick around. It just depends on, is it an alpha, beta, or gamma emitter, and you don't want any of those inside of you, right? So, again, if you're going to the store and you're thinking, hey, let's get some fish, you're saying, hey, let's accept some risk. That's what you're saying, why not just take up smoking? It's the same thing. You're slowly killing yourself. You're paying somebody to slowly kill yourself, right? So, and, I know there's people who smoke their whole lives till the day they're dead, till the day they pass away, and they don't care. It's fine, And, for some reason, their physiology, they can handle that. There are some people, they take up smoking. 15 years later, they're, in a cancer institute, and they're fighting for their lives, right? It really depends on your physiology, for sure. But, the more you do these kinds of things, the more you have these activities lined up, you're not just hurting your genetic tissue. You are passing that along to your kids, like you said earlier, with those folks who live near 3 Mile Island, right? you are passing that risk along to your kids. And this has been my message, hardcore with Operation Save the Earth the past couple years now. It's like, we need to get the next generation ready for the fight that is ahead for them. Because that's the reality. This generation coming up, they have to do the heavy lifting on all this, nuclear irresponsibility.
Not only the heavy lifting, they're going to start really seeing the effects. Their children are going to start seeing the effects. That's the downside. Like my children's children, my grandchildren's children. My grandchildren are apparently okay. But, they were born, I have 2 grandchildren that were born in 10? And one was born in 12. And, my other, I have, and I recently had one born last year, but within that crux of time, the Fukushima time, and we live in Oregon, it did go east to west. But I know for a fact that my daughter and I were talking about it. These are difficult conversations that if you're paying attention, I feel compelled to have with my child. You know what I mean?
Of course.
We're adults. And, the best that we can do is keep the children as healthy as possible, keep chemicals and pesticides out of their diet, keep their minds healthier and happier, have them address their needs. And allow them to understand that, as they get older, they'll be told about these things. My grandson, who's 9, really wants to become a biologist. He's really driven to want to be a biologist. He knows nothing about Fukushima, though, but it's going to be quite interesting when these kids they know that the world is contaminated. They understand that, right? So they do have the heavy lifting to do. They will be the ones that are going to have to, demand a different... This is the interesting thing, Dave. Our generation, we just sort of accepted the United Nations model of we're going to let the IAEA rule the roost, right?
Yeah.
That has pretty much destroyed the planet.
Oh, yes. When it's in your charter to promote nuclear energy and to downplay, basically, any type of disaster like we talked about before, right there. Right there, but that dictates what it is they want for an agenda, and everybody else needs to fall in line. The UN, the World Health Organization, all of those, global bodies that we're supposed to put our faith in, our trust in, when it comes to our human health, basically, right? And it's like, look, man, I don't understand how the UN and the World Health Organization can, to this day, basically ignore Fukushima. They have pretty much. The UNSCARE report came out and said, "Oh, well, it's not that bad," and that's it. That's it. Let's ignore the mixed oxide fuel that was in reactor 3 that got ejected. Let's ignore all the venting that took place at reactor 2. Let's forget that there was 4 hydrogen explosions. One of them was probably a nuclear detonation. And let's forget the quadrillions of becquerels of radioactive crap that went into the Pacific Ocean, right? Because UNSCARE says it's fine. So it must be.
Right. So it's, and by the way, have you noticed that they're picking up, and actually this is what I was thinking. I made a comment on a YouTube video that I made earlier this week, Dave, about how we're so outraged that they're bringing people back into Fukushima, but frankly, look at Rocky Flats. Look at 3 Mile Island. This is the way they operate. They let you be freaked out for a year or 2, and then they're like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's perfectly fine." And then they, either if they hadn't evacuated you, like in the United States, they just don't evacuate people. They just let you sit in the stew.
No.
We have not had an evacuation. Have we ever had one? I can't remember that we did.
No.
3 Mile Island people were told to watch batten the hatches.
Shelter in space mostly, yeah.
Right.
And that would be the case for any nuclear accident that happened here in the United States. They wouldn't tell you to evacuate. Let's say that something like that happened here in Phoenix. I live in a city, 1.5 million people live here. And there's a nuclear reactor station 40 miles east of here. Now, I've seen the projections of what would happen if just one of those reactors goes up over at Palo Verde. And depending on what time of year it is, we're talking about evacuating 1 million people, not just from the Phoenix area, but also from Tucson. And it's like, how do you evacuate 1 million people? Oh, wait, you can't. All you could do is like tell them to sit in place for 2 weeks while the iodine does its thing, and you'll pray that you don't get cancer, basically. And that's just ridiculous to me. I'm like, look, we all know now that there are way cheaper, better ways to create energy that are going to be reliable, and everybody's going to benefit from them long-term down the stretch. The renewable sector has been growing like crazy the last 5 years, especially here in Phoenix. Every time I go out driving, I see more solar panels up every single time I go out. And that's so encouraging. And I know that if we switch to a better mix where we're seeing a lot more renewables come into play, where wind and solar really not just take the field, but own the field, nuclear is going to be a non-issue in 20 years. I mean, we're already in an era now where, are we seeing any new builds? Georgia, no. South Carolina, no.
The scary
China,
part is they're selling them to Saudi Arabia and into India, into China. I mean, they're selling them into the so-called third world countries. And Saudi Arabia basically the other day said, look, if North Korea is going to be armed, if Israel is going to be armed, if Iran is going to be armed, we are getting our own nuclear weapons. And they have started uranium mining, doing their own uranium mining. So they are... this is the thing. We're beginning to recognize that we're on a need-to-know basis. So if they're telling us they're doing it now, they probably are so farther ahead than what they're telling us.
Oh, sure.
So,
it's only in the past year that they've, actually past several months, that they've been talking about Saudi Arabia, really, stepping up their nuclear game. Same with the United Arab Emirates. They're trying to get a seat at the big boy table also. And that's the whole thing, right? Look at what happened with North Korea, right? For years and years and years, saber rattling. And now, now that their nuclear testing facility is, taken all the rattling it can and has collapsed on itself, well, and they've been invited to the big boy table. They just had a big meeting with South Korea. They just signed an armistice saying this is the end of the war. And now they have a sit down with Trump coming up, right? So, if that's the process that it takes, to get a seat at the big boy table and have power over everyone else, because once you're a nuclear power, you have say over everybody else, right? The one exception that we're seeing to that, Lonnie, now is ICAN, right? The International Coalition to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, because what they've done is they've gone directly to the UN and the other countries that are not nuclear powers that far outnumber the ones that have nuclear capacity, right? And they're saying, well, we're going to just say no more nukes. Then what are you going to do about it? Right? Well, we have the nukes. Well, no. The other 100 countries are saying, no, you can't have them. We're going to come to a head at this at some point on this. And I think
we are, and we're going to come.
Right?
We're coming to it sooner than later, and I don't think that majority is going to rule, Dave. I think majority is going to rule after the horror of a nuclear bomb is dropped again. I think these lunatics have lost sight of what it really means to drop a nuclear weapon on a city. They have lost all their sense of compassion, and they see it as a viable option, as a way to get their sense of power. And I think it's going to have to, honestly, I think that's, I don't think we have gone a long time without dropping a nuclear weapon. And frankly, the United States is the only country that ever has.
Right.
Ever. We're the ones who actually even now are using little mini nuclear weapons. We're using little depleted uranium weapons and selling them now. So those are little mini nuclear weapons. So we have a commitment to using this country, not we, but the United States military and its oligarchy have a serious commitment to nuclear arsenals and to using them.
Sure.
So
yeah, they paid for it, right? Might as well use it. That's
not
the
only
mindset.
that, it's quite effective at calling the population. Let's be clear. I mean, to be honest, I know it may people who are serious anti-nukers who are in the court system and in the business sector. When I say these things, I know I sound like a complete nutter, but honestly, it feels like an extermination event because this is not an accident. They know what they're doing. The scientists know exactly. This agreement with the World Health Organization, if you look it up, between the World Health Organization and the International Atomic Energy Agency, gives the IAEA censorship control over what the World Health Organization does, because they know that it is so horrible that they have to control the information so tightly.
Right. But just ask the moms in Fallujah how that's working out.
Exactly.
With the kids who've been exposed to this depleted uranium and have horrible malformations and, genetic defects now as a result. That's on us. But when are people going to realize that? All that stuff that happened in Fallujah, that's on us. We, the taxpayers, paid for those bombs. Right? When are we going to stand up and say no more? That's really what it comes down to, Lonnie. We have got to be the ones that ends the cycle. We have to be the ones that ends the cycle, because if we're not, it's just going to be harder, that much harder for the kids coming up and the grandkids that are to follow. And look, if you want to have great grandkids, folks, that's really what it comes down to, because if we're starting to see species die off as a result of all of the terrible things that we're doing to this planet, right? Well, who's the alpha species? We are, right? And eventually, we're going to see die off too, because that's the cycle, right? If the fish die off, if the birds die off, if the bears die off, if the bees die off, how much longer before mankind dies off? Not that much longer. So, the whole nuclear issue, nuclear war, hey, if y'all want to do that, knock yourselves out. I've been saying this for a long time, Lonnie. Hey, nuclear bad guys, why don't you just press the button? Save me the trouble of trying to save the world. It's called Operation Save the Earth for a reason, because, there's a lot of work to be done all the time, not just on the nuclear issue, not just on Fukushima, but on all of these fronts, right? And we all need to gather together and take care of our business. But, the nuclear bad guys, they keep saying, we're going to press the button, we're going to press the button, we're going to press the button, sword of Damocles. It's like, why don't you? Why don't you go ahead and start World War III?
Right, exactly.
Be my guest. Be my guest.
Well, you know what?
But they never do. They never do they?
I don't think that they're going to start. Frankly, I think World War III has started. This is an assault on the planet, what they were already doing.
Yes,
but
it has.
In terms of using the nuclear bomb, I think for them it's more of a point of amusement. Like they're going to have they're having their party, whether we were invited or not. They don't care. They're having it. And it includes getting Israel as to be a state, a national state inside the Middle East to help create the wars that they want to create. They're setting it up perfectly. Today, they killed how many people in Palestine, just picked off the protesters, straight up murdered people, at the opening of the embassy. This is gearing up to, we have to use a nuclear weapon. And we see the scenario. They're playing their game. It is a dangerous game, but for them it is a game. It's a sport. And we are like, we're the disposable assets,
Oh, yeah. And see, just because you have, nuclear capacity, you have nuclear bombs, it allows you to be a bully, right? North Korea bullied Japan. Israel bullies Iran. And, what does that make Japan and Iran want to do? Hey, give me a nuclear weapon and then try bullying me, right? That is it's backwards mindset right there. If we say, hey, guess what, Israel, North Korea, let's just take away your nukes. Well, then what? Do Japan and Iran need nuclear capacity after that? Not really. Not really. If we abolish all nukes like ICANN wants us to, we don't need nobody needs the deterrent right? Because there is nothing to deter. So, that's what I've been saying this whole time. Let's get rid of all nukes. Let's just get rid of them all. Why are we supporting deals like the Iran nuclear deal that, basically says, oh, well, nuclear capacity. Go ahead, build some more
nuclear power plants. Go build plants everywhere.
But what?
Nuclear power plants are okay. Nuclear bombs are not okay. That's the message, Dave. Nuclear power plants, the friendly atom. It's the thing that has the thing between the IAEA and the World Health Organization. Except in that agreement, it states specifically that they will consult each other on the most efficient use of information, resources, and technical personnel in the field of statistics and in regard to all statistical projects dealing with matters of common interest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a sideways way of saying is that we will not allow, for example, I saw 13 scientists who were studying the deaths of the seals off of the West Coast. This was in 2014, I believe. There was 10 or 12 of them standing there asking questions. And a reporter said, well, did you test any of the animals for radioactivity from Fukushima? Because that was when the so-called plume was supposed to be hitting the West Coast. Remember, it turned into the blob, and now it's no longer radioactivity. But it was considered in 2011, they projected a plume would be hitting the West Coast in 2015. And right on course, around that same time, 14, 15 mass animal deaths were happening. And the scientists were scratching their heads going, oh, we have no idea. Let's study this. A reporter had the wherewithal to say, did you test them for radioactivity? The scientists specifically said, no, we were specifically mandated to exclude radioactivity, so we cannot study that.
Well, that's the scientific answer now, isn't it? Very diplomatic of them.
Very diplomatic.
I'm sure, if they were allowed, I'm sure that they would have shown that there was, adverse effects, because obviously, why are sea lions starving? Because the same reason why all the birds and all the fish are dying, that we talked about earlier. It's like, it's very simple, the math, it's causality, right? So if you're going to just ignore things or be paid to ignore things, look, man, over the long term, and we're starting to see this more and more, Lonnie. I'm really actually encouraged by this because I've seen more and more just kind of random mainstream reports about Fukushima, about the water, about everything that's going on
like the Scientific American, it's starting to crack. They're having to tell people, yes, there is some radioactivity in your food.
And, what's encouraging about that is because, I knew that over time, they would try to get us to forget about things. That was the playbook in 3 Mile Island. It's the playbook at Chernobyl. I knew that that's what they were going to go for here with Fukushima. But here's the key difference. In 1979, 1986, we didn't really have the internet. Now, did we? We didn't have smartphones that we could connect to each other on a global scale instantaneously. But we do now. And by Operation Save the Earth and all of the Fuku fighters around the world who I want to thank, who are doing the awesome work every single day, you know who you are, and I love all of you. We keep Fukushima alive, the Fukushima news alive in the news feed. And by doing so, we're the ones steering the narrative on this, right? It's not about what, the cover-up says, not about what IAEA says, it's not about what UN says about all this. The people are still turning out every day, every week, putting out the articles, finding the information, finding the data, and we're getting more and more experts now as a result, right? So as long as we continue to do what we do, which is our 8 minutes, right? Go find an article, go post it on your newsfeed, go post it on your Twitter, share the information as far and wide as possible, because that has a two-cause effect when you do that. You're informing your people in your newsfeed, all of your friends and followers, right? They get to see that you're a conscientious person, you care about what's going on in the world, and that you're trying to share information that's going to be important to them, right? Because why else are you sharing information in your newsfeed, right? And that the second thing that does is the bots that come and take information and feed the Google algorithms, feed the Bing algorithms, feed the Yahoo algorithms. They take that content and they put it into the big machine, right? The big machine takes that, and guess what? Unless you shut down the internet, you can't shut down dissent. You can't shut down protest. You can't, shut down the sharing of information for free, which is what the internet was invented for in the first place. That's the best part of what we do. The proof fighters, we have carte blanche to do what it is that we're doing. And you know what? All those, naysayers who are like, oh, harmful internet rumor, Dave, you're just, buying into the hype, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you could probably say that in 2011, 2012. You sure as hell cannot say that here in 2018 because we have the data, we have the experts, and we have all the information. Go ahead, lie. The more the more the pro-nuke crowd out there, spins their little wheels and continues to, run that playbook, the more out of touch with the reality they set. Because our data shows otherwise. Our experts say otherwise. All the information that we have accrued over the past 8 years clearly shows that we're in this, downward spiral as a result in the Pacific Ocean of what happened in Fukushima. And we're seeing, increased cancer across the board in North America as a result also. So, again, the math, speaks volumes. And as a result, what do we need to do? What do we as individuals need to do? We need to do our job. It's not free to live on this planet. You may think so, but you need to give back, right? You can't just be all taking. You've got to be able to give back too.
That's funny, Dave. I'm sorry, that made me laugh. It's not free to live here. It does cost, but the thing is, a lot of people don't want to face it. This is the thing. There's so many. The idea, people want to pick their poison, so to speak, quite literally, right? So the issue of facing this, but because it is such we're coming up against the literal power structure. It's easier to go against, say, the GMO industry, or it's easier to go against the pharmaceutical industry because, the opioid crisis and all this other stuff. So I think this is part of the journey of getting people to, I think that none of them are disconnected. I think it's all sort of an overall program to basically gaslight us and make us feel as if there's nothing we can do. And the reality is there's plenty. And this is why I love your podcast and I like your website, Operation Save the Earth, www.oste.org or com.
Yeah, actually, it's just OperationSaveTheEarth.com, all spelled out.
.com, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, it's real simple.
Operation Save the Earth.
You can follow us on Twitter at OSTE at.
Oh, that's right.
OSTE 8 minutes. Yeah, all spelled out. I know it. The anti-nuclear crowd. It's the hardest one to join. I think, because there's a lot of different causes, like you said, out there. Let's save the whales.
Well, not only is it the hardest one to join, but it's not just it's hard to join, but it's hard to get engaged with the anti-nuclear organizations.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Because there's not many of them.
Yes, that's very true. When I started this whole thing with Operation Save the Earth back in 2011, the first thing I did was jump online. I said, okay, anti-nuclears, what do you got for me? And I saw a lot of web pages that hadn't been updated since 1998. And I was like, okay, well, I guess we're just going to have to start from scratch then. So, that's when I started, accruing all of the data about Fukushima that I could. And now I have over 2,000 verified links to reports and studies and everything that you need. I have the whole story, from the summer of 2011 to today. I have it all right there that you can look at and see for yourself. And, I think one of the things that's really hard about the whole thing with the nuclear issue, Lonnie, for people to wrap their heads around is, it's not just it's such a big issue and it's so complex and there's a lot of, technical things to learn. Part of the big problem to me is you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't see it, you can't even sense it when it's happening to you, right? But it doesn't change the fact that this is a reality and it's actually happening. What we need to understand, and just kind of take on this mindset. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but if you really take it to heart, it's going to help you visualize things a little bit more. Look at radiation and the releases of radiation into the environment the same way you would magical pixie dust, right? In cartoons, the pixies come along and they sprinkle this dust on you and you're magically transformed, right? Well, you don't really see the pixie dust for more than a second, right, in the cartoons, right? Well, that's kind of like how radiation is. You don't see it at all, but it changes you when it hits you. So, you have to, be cognizant of the fact that this pixie dust, it doesn't go away. It decays over time. Look at the dosimeters for people in Fukushima Prefecture that still live there. We still have close to 2 million people living in Fukushima Prefecture to this day, right? And most of them will tell you, well, I don't worry about it because this dosimeter over here says it's 0.05, and I feel free walking around here, even though we have other studies and other videos and other things that show, hey, guess what? There's hot particles all around there still. And you could be walking through a forest. You could be walking through a park. You could be walking on a footpath. And just by breathing, you're ingesting a hot particle. And that hot particle is going to do what to you over time? Take you out over time, right? So,
well, the hard part is it's not just taking yourself out. You may be able, like this is, you listen to the women and the people from Chernobyl, right? They were teenagers and they grew up. They thought they were fine. They were relieved. Their family was like, oh, thank God, my kids, we're safe.
Right.
We're all right. Well, the women, they can't have babies. They constantly have miscarriages. When they do have babies, they can't survive. Or they're very dramatically affected, or their children are fine, but then their grandchildren, like it's common for children to have 10 fingers in that region. Like these are things that really, honestly, because we're not seeing it, and that is one of the things the IAEA did really well. They cover up using the World Health Organization these events, like when we had those microencephaly babies up in Washington State. Within 90 days, the Department of Ecology and the Department of Energy put out a report that said, no possible way did Hanford cause this. Now, they did the study within 90 days. And in fact, they started and ended it, which means they only studied it for 30 days, right? Which meant the parameters of their study, it's kind of like what they did in Chernobyl, the same type of thing. They narrow the parameters of their study, just like the fish thing. We specifically excluded radioactivity. In Chernobyl, they specifically, the IAEA, in fact, prevented the World Health Organization from going to Chernobyl for 5 years. Yeah. So,
of course,
we're being led, like, this is what I'm saying, Dave. They know what they're doing. Not an accident.
Yes, they do.
Now, you're counting on the fact that majority rules, that our energy will prevent them from doing anything catastrophic. I'll go with that. Yeah. I will jump on the optimism bandwagon because the pessimistic bandwagon is likely to happen anyways.
Yeah.
So I'm just choosing to be optimistic and say, let's put that best foot forward because, frankly, I have considering. This thing on the summit, it's made me really nervous because these oligarchs, they love numbers, right? So June 12th is George Bush Sr.'s birthday.
Okay.
Which is just way too coincidental considering George Bush Sr. basically said he would love to see a nuclear bomb used as a deterrent. He said that in a speech a long time ago. So I just, I think that they're setting us up. They're getting us very, very close to this idea that we must drop the bomb. That's where
let me ask you a question, though, Lonnie. Do the bad guys have Netflix? Amazon?
The Hulu? Bad guys. I love how you call them the bad guys. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, because, I mean, look, if they're going to wear black hats, I'm just going to call them what they are, right? So, I mean, hey, guess what, bad guys? I mean, try getting Netflix on your TV sometime. Apparently you don't have it, because once you do, you'll understand that there are literally dozens of movies about the post-apocalyptic era in worlds where, after a nuclear disaster, after da-da-da-da, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, where we blew each other up. Try watching some of those movies and see how well things turned out. If you're going to go living in a bunker, you think you're going to go be safe in some porn palace somewhere. I have a movie for you that came out in the 70s. It's called A Boy and His Dog, starring Don Johnson, very young Don Johnson. And it's about, post-apocalyptic world. Everyone's scrapping for that last can of beans out in the desert. And the people who live underground have gone sterile. They can't reproduce. They live in this really bizarre, I don't want to say utopia, because it's not. It's just weirdo land underground. But see how that works out for you, bad guys. It's not going to. There's another movie you maybe should check out. It's called War Games. Came out in 1985 with Matthew Broderick. What did the computer simulation show? Spoiler alert at the end of the movie. It showed that every nuclear scenario where one bomb went off here, one bomb goes over there, they all lead to nuclear Armageddon for the entire planet. Every scenario you run, there's a bomb in India, it leads to this. There's a bomb in North Korea, it leads to this. Everybody gets wiped off the planet. That's what the math says. So guess what, former President Bush, if you would like to see a bomb go off, just because you think it'd be cool, we already have archival footage of that. Is that not good enough for you? Do you really want to see, people suffering in the streets? You want to see, burned victims? You want to see,
think their answer is yes. You want me to? I think we are dealing with seriously mentally deranged creatures who are in positions of high power. And frankly, that's why I say happiness is resistance. Because if we do not allow them to control us with fear, we can overcome their evil intent. And I really believe that.
That's right.
And that's why it's really important for us to stay with the right idea. Like, it's important for us to pay attention to what's happening, though, and be realistic. This is why I always bring in, it is nuclear. Nuclear is like the elephant in the room, in my view. This thing about, we have been ignoring, we don't bring up what nuclear causes, the kind of health effects, the hundreds of, we know from the NRC's website that they say for every 2 rads in the air for a population of 1 million. Now, how many millions do we have in our country? Every 2 rads in the air for each population of 1 million. They know we get over 200,000 birth defects a year and 32,000 extra cancers, i.e., it's why we have a cancer explosion.
Yes, absolutely. And,
it's on their website.
Who's
do the math.
Everyone who's racing for the cure, hey, guess what? Stop running. Here's an idea. Let's shut down the nuclear facility in your area.
Exactly.
You really want to stop cancer? That would be the number one thing that you can do to help yourself and your family.
That's right. And stop the nuclear medicine insanity. This thing of, we need to have it for nuclear medicine. No, we don't. Nuclear medicine does not save people. It kills people. People's length of life and quality of life after they get nucleated is 0. Like, it is dramatically worse than before. I do not agree with it at all. I think we need to free doctors and free medicine from the clutches of corporate greed and allow real healers to heal and allow real medicine to come back.
Yeah, I totally agree with, that doctors need to have the yoke thrown off of them so that they can, do the work that they need to do.
But, they're not allowed to prescribe herbs. They're not even taught about herbs. No. Herbology is off of their plates. They can prescribe pharmaceuticals. You know what I mean? Like this, it's outrageous.
Good old big pharma. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Lonnie. It's all connected, and it's all a cycle that either we're going to break, or the kids coming up, like I said, the next generation are going to break, or the grandkids are going to break. Because look, This
or it will
cycle
break
cannot
itself.
continue because it's going to break all of us. It's already breaking us. It's already breaking the Pacific Ocean, right? So, I know that mankind has been through a lot in the past 70,000 years, right? We have overcome a lot of things, that we've either perpetrated on ourselves or, natural disasters and so forth. And our track record is pretty good, for bouncing back. So, the optimism train, I'm the conductor on that train. And please, welcome aboard, because everyone needs to get on board with this deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just because the bad guys don't have Netflix, they don't have Xbox, they don't understand that you can blow things up and kill each other all day long on video games.
Okay.
Sociopaths. I'll have the most toys and everybody else. We're gonna, do it my way and everything. That's nice. Please die off soon, because the rest of us have already figured out that there's better and easier ways to doing things. Okay, so I have the ultimate confidence, Lonnie, because I know what these kids coming up are capable of. I've been blessed to see the kids who are graduating from high school this year, graduated last year, and there's so many bright lights that are just waiting to not
let's
just
be clear.
activists,
there are
but
kids
to change the world.
I mean, our humans are really magnificent beings. We really have the capacity to manage this and to find the solutions. And I believe, frankly, that there probably are solutions that are being repressed because they do want to cull the population.
For sure.
I mean, that's how but I think what's happened is when you look at the mass animal deaths, I think it's getting out of control. The mass animal deaths, it is a serious, it is hitting every continent, the United States, the UAE, Canada, Australia, the Philippines, Malta, Taiwan. I mean, every single day there are reports of massive, millions of jellyfish washed up on the coast of Malta.
Yep.
That's just huge.
Mankind, let me ask you a question, mankind. When you wake up one day and there's no other birds or bees or squirrels or anything else around you, how lonely are you going to be?
Well, the thing is, if we don't have those creatures, we're not going to be able to grow plants.
Exactly.
We have to have you can't just have plants with no animals. It just does not work that way. And frankly, look what's happening in Chernobyl. They don't decompose. The forests are not decomposing. So they have seriously, dramatically altered the ecosphere, the ecology of that area with nuclear contamination, just like Fukushima is. In fact, all of Japan is getting. It makes me sad that people are acting like it's no big deal. Just, I don't know, Dave. It's kind of a heartbreak, which is why I keep doing this, because really. Yeah. We need to cherish our cultures. We need to cherish humanity. And for us to just disregard and downplay this level of contamination on all sides, it's time for us to pay attention and say, basta, it is enough. Enough is enough.
Yeah.
So
enough is
hashtag enough
no
is
more
enough.
Nukes.
Yeah. Hashtag no nukes. Exactly. Dave, we have 30 seconds left. We have 30 seconds. Give out your website again.
Sure. Take step one for yourself. Educate and safeguard. Learn more about the problem. Go to OperationSaveTheEarth.com, all spelled out, no breaks. You can, to start your journey there, there's so many links. It's the most comprehensive link section for Fukushima news on the web, period. You won't find anything better than what we
That's
got.
awesome. Thanks, Dave Parrish. And thank you, KEPW.org and Eugene, for carrying our show. See you guys at UCY.TV tomorrow. Put your courage feet on. Talk to you guys later.
Peace.
Yeah, peace.